Good morning. It's Wednesday, March 14th, and this is your morning overview. In the midst of what is undeniably the most devastating global financial collapse in known history, and subsequently on the eve of the breakout of thermonuclear war, a small town in Texas decided to get the party celebrating their God-given talents for inducing their own extinction started a little early at a Fort Bend County Democratic Executive Board meeting on March 12th.
I'm a citizen of the U.S. and I support getting a real candidate for president and impeaching Obama because we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice but to do that.
Okay, quick.
I'm O'Connell, proud supporter of Keisha Rogers. Save NASA and impeach Obama.
I'm Regina, and I support the real Democrat of the tradition of Roosevelt, Kennedy, and Keisha.
Mr. Pintado, I'm with Keisha, I'm a U.S. patriot, and as a principle, actually, to remove Obama. If you guys have not caught on to that, you gotta look at your previous.
Thank you. Now, word has it that once upon a time, deep in the backwoods of Dixie, next to a lazy river winding through a valley where the sun don't shine, was the lawless town of the ashamed and the shameless, known as Skonk Hollow. And one day, during a bout of extreme weather, the rains came, and since none of them knew where the moral high ground was, the whole lot of them slid down the Mississippi and washed up at the headquarters of the Fort Bend County Democratic Party. So, while President Obama enjoys the lowest approval ratings in the history of his presidency, perhaps he will be consoled when he hears that we have found what appears to be the remains of his support base, the long-lost species of yokels, which, stunningly enough, also appeared to have been the inspiration of Al Cap's famous cartoon, Lil Abner. Meet SDEC member Mr. Don Bankston, who 2 years ago tried to pass a resolution to have LaRouche Democrat Keisha Rogers kicked out of the state Democratic Party.
Again, on behalf of the State Democratic Executive Committee, it's with great pleasure that I speak on behalf of the President of the United States, Barack Obama. Gentleman who has fulfilled his campaign promise. He promised that he would get us out of Iraq, and we now have no combat soldiers in Iraq, and that's because of Barack Obama. Yeah. He promised that he would do what George Bush wouldn't do, and that is end the life of Osama bin Laden. He not only deserves a second term, he will get a second term. In January 2013, we will have the second inaugural address of the great President, Mr. Barack Obama.
Each candidate was able to speak and state their intention for running. Here's Keisha Rogers.
About your candidacy.
Well, what I'd like to say is that the Democratic Party must continue the tradition of John F. Kennedy and President Roosevelt. That's what I represent. And many people know, as I walked door to door in the 2010 election and got the nomination of the Democratic Party and called for Obama's removal, his impeachment, and for the full funding of NASA, that we are going against the interests of our patriots, against the interests of our citizens. Look at what's going on right now. Ask yourself, how is it can we sit here as Democrats and defend the president who's continuing to drive the country toward World War III? How can we sit here as Democrats and watch the tradition of President Franklin Roosevelt and President John F. Kennedy be trampled over? The cutbacks to our NASA manned space program. Yes, that is what I represent. The full funding of our manned space program. We must stop the Wall Street bailouts now. This president has been a puppet to Wall Street. He has continued to push a policy that the Republicans are supporting. That's why right now the American people know that we don't have a real candidate. These Republican candidates are clowns. They should not be elected. Obama, if the Democratic Party had the moral courage and the guts to say, we must break with him and go with the real policy solution. That's Glass-Steagall banking reorganization. That is a credit system for massive infrastructure development for the North American water and power lines. I represent a national policy solution. So if you want to learn more about that, you should go to my website at KeishaForCongress.com and learn that right now the Democratic Party has to take responsibility. We have to act first as patriots. Talk about nation and not about party, and that's what I represent. Thank you.
All right.
Now, where the yokels come from, they ain't much for truth. So, immediately following Keisha's remarks, Earthquake Magoon Don Bankston decided to take matters into his own hands and do exactly what the chair of the state party told him to do, who no doubt is doing what they're being told to do by the Obama administration. And since lynch mob tactics are all gut and no thought, Bankston was the perfect guy for the job.
Whereas in this race there is only one true Democrat. His name is K.P. George. His opposition,
that's not democratic.
Ms. Rogers represents a cult, represents a fringe that calls for the impeachment of the president or the removal of the president of the United States, who has the audacity to have a poster that puts a Hitler mustache on the President of the United States. Bring disgrace to the President of the United States and to our Democratic Party. So at the request of the current state chair and of the incoming state chair and of the majority members of the SDC, I move that this executive committee condemn the candidacy of Keisha George and endorse.
There is a motion. I second the motion. Okay, there's a motion on the floor. It's properly seconded. The motion is that as a county executive committee, we will formally endorse K.P. George in this primary election.
Yes.
Is there any discussion?
Yes.
I have a couple of questions, if I may.
Yeah, that's discussion, but not many.
Okay, I may. What you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm well.
My name is Priscilla Harden.
Okay. Where am I from? From South Texas.
Are you? Where'd you go to school?
What's their point?
Oh, jeez.
No interviews. Move on.
You want to even answer a simple question?
Exactly.
I am.
You are? What's your policy on abuse?
On abuse?
On abuse.
We shouldn't be abused.
We shouldn't. Well, how dare you to put a mustache?
Why are you abusing her? Sounds like you're trying to abuse her.
You know what?
This is abuse already.
This is already abuse.
Okay.
Where did the other guy go to school?
I said I was out.
Can you put order to this,
You're
please?
running on the Democratic ticket? Where's the order? You're running on the Democratic ticket?
There's no order.
Okay, I'm talking.
Just get to the point.
You're disrespecting yourself, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
If you are, I'd like to know, are you running on the Democratic ticket?
She already said she
But
was.
then why does the Republican office for LaRouche cause myself to represent you?
The Republican office for LaRouche?
Yes.
It doesn't exist.
Republican office for LaRouche?
Thank you.
Give us a break.
Response to any of that?
It don't make sense.
Okay. All right. Let's move on.
Give us a
Any more
break.
discussion?
Republican office.
I want to ask the candidate something. I want to ask Ms. Rogers something. When you describe that the British Empire is controlling our presidency, who do you mean? Because I technically have looked up reference that you mean that the British Empire are actually a slam and a misrepresentation of Jewish people in this country. I have looked it up. I have looked up the evidence of Mr. Lyndon LaRouche. He is a bigot. He is an anti-Semite. He stands for the wrong. He stands for everything that is wrong with America. And I want you to come on here and I want you to say to these people, why do you believe about this British Empire? Please tell the American people, why do you believe the British Empire is controlling this country when they obviously have nothing? Please tell us, sir. And please tell us why you, exactly. Please tell us why you endorse a convicted felon, a man that has...
Easy. I believe I know how this is going to turn out. So why don't we call the question?
I'll answer the question.
All right.
That's not
real quick.
And I have a real quick one.
Real quick.
I'd like to know whether or not you respect the office of the presidency.
I do.
So, if that's the case, to segue, then how in the world can you take these pictures and put these pictures on the highway of our president? That's not respectful. You're disrespecting the office when you do that.
Thank you.
If the Germans had stood up and fought,
we're not talking about Germany. We're talking about
Hitler would not have gotten away with what he's doing. I'm addressing your question here because we have a president who is continuing to push the same policies that Hitler pushed. The policies
And also the Bush policy.
All right, be more specific. Ms. Ross, yeah, one quick question.
I don't have a question. Now, you might have seen remnants of this long-lost species at a Democratic Party near you. Perhaps we should tell the Democrats that these folks aren't the best role models for recruiting a younger generation to join their ranks. However, regardless of their fate, in our efforts to map out the evolutionary history of different species across hundreds of millions of years, looking with awe at a potentially limitless creative future ahead of us, we thought it our duty here at LPAC to keep a record of those species that probably will never make it into the fossil record. I mean, let's be honest, how are you going to make it into the fossil record without a spine?